So today I'm gonna be talking about our purpose with Jesus and why it's important that we always remember that we do have a purpose with Jesus and that things on this earth we feel like we have purpose in them, but they don't last. And what I mean by that is we try to find purpose in all kinds of things throughout our walk of life. We'll try to find purpose in sports, outside of school activities, all kinds of things,
maybe
money.
Theater.
Yeah, maybe theater, but and all those things are fun, especially if you're good at them and you do really well in them. They feel like you have a purpose in them, and you might have a purpose in those things, but there's a bigger purpose in our lives that we can't forget about as Christians, and things in this world don't last as long or forever. Our purpose with Jesus lasts forever. You know what I'm saying? And so I got a few verses that I picked out a long time ago, and I'm finally sharing them. So the first thing is Jeremiah 32:26, and it says, "Great in counsel and mighty in work, for thine eyes are open upon all the ways of the sons of men, to give everyone according to his ways and according to the fruits of his doing." So in this verse, if we break it up, it says great in counsel and mighty in work. So great in counsel, what that means is that God is with us through every single thing that we do. No matter what we're doing or no matter where we are, God is always there with us. And it says mighty in work. So God is mighty in the work that he does. And when we have him and we remember his purpose with us, he's mighty in his work and he's mighty in what he does. And he helps us with his work, or he helps us throughout what we're doing because he's mighty with his work. And then another verse, Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." So if we go to the beginning of this verse, it says, "For I know the thought that I think toward you, saith the Lord." So God knows about us completely. He knows every single little thing about us. And because of that, he knows what our purpose is, and he knows how he can use us if we just listen to him and we just follow what he says.
In a different version, it says, "For I know the plans that I have for you, says the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope in the future." He didn't bring us here so that we can just live this life and it be done. He don't want to harm us. He brought us here for good. He brought us here to fulfill his duty on earth as Christians. We all have a purpose, and it's through God. Some of us are called to do this thing. Some of us are called to do this thing. Not all of us have the same calling, but we all have a calling from God. Because God anointed us and appointed us for this thing in our life, whether we realize it yet or not. God has a calling for you.
For sure.
You're not an accident. God has a calling for everything that you do under the sun.
And in the end part of the verse, it says thoughts of peace and not of evil. God thinks on things of peace and not of things of evil. So if we try to seek evil in our life and we try to seek things that are not of God and that are not of peace, we won't have purpose in it. There's a reason why money goes by really quick, and why drugs and any other thing you can think of that are worldly pleasures, they don't last long, because they're not of God and they're not of peace. They're of evil in the end.
And those things, we all go to those to get fulfilled. We think it's what God's called. Maybe not even God. We think that's what's going to fill us up, what's going to get us through our week. If we go party, if we go drink, if we go do all this stuff. But the thing is, if people went out and party every Friday night they went out and party, then how come on this Saturday or the next Friday, how come they go party again? If it filled them up the first time, they wouldn't have to go party again. So with God, if you stay in your word, you get filled up. God, it's like a puzzle, and Jesus is the piece that fits. And it's only Jesus. It's not things of this world. It's not drugs. It's not money. It's not sex. It's not any of this stuff. It's Jesus, Jesus, Jesus.
And the end part of this verse, it says to give you an expected end. And whenever it's the way I read that the first time was expected end kind of sounds kind of bad. But if you think about it, whenever you're living with the world, you don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know where you are or what's going to happen to your future. And that's the same way with Christians. Sometimes we may not know what all is going to happen, but we know one thing for sure, and it's no matter what happens, there's always a future. There's always an expected end with us. We know what happens when we die, whenever we lose. We still have God. We'll still go to heaven, and we'll still have God with us even when we fail in life. And so that's what this means by an expected ends. We are already expecting what's going to happen to us because we know, since the Bible tells us. And so, I'm going to find another verse. I marked these a long time ago. Okay, so Isaiah 26, 3-4 says, Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. Trust ye in the Lord forever, for in the Lord Jehovah is everlasting strength. And so in the first part of this verse, it says, Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. When we trust on Jesus and we trust in the Lord to get us through things in life, we'll have peace forever, because we'll always know where we are with God, and we don't always know where we are with the world. Relationships with people, they don't last very long unless they're family. Even family sometimes doesn't last, depending on your actions. But no matter what actions we have on the earth, or no matter what happens to us, we always have peace in the Lord if we think on Him and we accept His purpose in our life. And the world is not the same way, you know. Like I said, relationships, but other things like jobs don't last all the time. And yeah, jobs aren't always reliable. Anything isn't reliable. Opportunities, they come and they pass. And the next part of this verse is, Trust in the Lord forever, and the Lord Jehovah is everlasting strength. So, you know, like as the verse says, we have everlasting strength with the Lord. Even if we perish on the earth, we go to heaven, and that's everlasting strength, because He's always there, no matter what happens to us. And so, let me go to the next verse. Let me see. I think I'm finally in the New Testament now. So Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good, and to them that love God, and to them who are called according to His purpose. So in this verse it says, and we know all things work together for good who love God. And so, just as the verse says, if we love God, and if we're always keeping His commandments with us, if we're always trusting in Jesus, if we just think on these things and we love God, all things will work together for good. You'll start noticing things in your life, and like I've noticed that whenever my mind strays from God, good things don't usually follow. And then we're quick to blame God for those things, and we're quick to blame other people, but sometimes we can almost blame ourselves if we are not stayed there with God. Because I've noticed that whenever I backslide a lot with God and I start being more like the world, things don't work together completely for me. Like, things don't go great when I'm not always with the Lord. But whenever I'm with God and I'm always trusting God, and like it says in this verse, for them that love God, things work together, things will work. And even if they seem like they don't, they're all happening for a reason. And it's because God is making things work out for you and for your purpose. And our purpose isn't always about us, it's about other people. So if we're going through tough times, sometimes we need to talk to other people and relate to other people, and maybe that's a way for us to fellowship with other people, is going through hardships with other people. So you always have to keep that in mind, what your purpose is.
Because hardships can bring you together. Because most of the time when things aren't going good in life, people automatically want to go and say, well, God's not with me right now, that's why all this stuff's going wrong, or God isn't for me, or this stuff wouldn't be happening to me. But at the same time, God can be putting you through something to strengthen your faith, to strengthen your love in Him. He can be putting you through anything in the world, just so that you will come back and realize how great He is and how powerful He is. You gotta keep your faith strong at all times. And God says if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, it is powerful. It can move mountains. So you have to have faith no matter what you're going through.
Amen. And then down to the last two verses. Let me see.
And that's easier to say than it is to do. Because I've lost faith before, and not necessarily lost all faith, but like there's been times when my faith's been tested where I had given up almost. And then out of nowhere, God slipped through and He came back into my life, and it just changed me.
Amen. He always comes back into your life when you let Him in.
He never really left. You just got to keep digging.
It's us blocking Him out, not Him blocking us out, is what you always have to remember. And then Colossians 1:16 For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in the earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him. And so in the beginning of this verse it says, for by him all things were created that are in heaven and that are in earth. Like, obviously, the Lord created every single thing, and everything on the earth has a purpose, whether we see it or not. And it says visible and invisible, whether they be thrones, dominions, or principalities. Everything on the earth, like the rulers of the world, the dominions, the principalities, all that was all made by God, or it was all elected by God, and has purpose, like, for every single thing that they do. And it says all things were created by him and for him. And that ultimately is what our goal is. We were created by God and we were created for God. We weren't created to have all the pleasures of the earth. That's it. Like, there's pleasures of the earth that are okay and that we can enjoy, but it's not what our purpose is in the world. And when we have a purpose with Jesus, we will have good times and we'll be able to have like times of pleasure, sure, but in the end our purpose was for God, because we were created by God, and our purpose is to go out and spread the good news of Jesus Christ and the good news of the Bible,
And
all of that.
Sometimes it's not just by telling someone about it. God says that you must love one another. That's
Yeah.
literally Jesus' words. So maybe not just so much of me going up to Lauren and starting to tell him about Jesus. Maybe if he has something going wrong, I can help him. Because that is showing God's love through me. If I'm showing people love, if I'm helping them, and if I'm talking to them when they have stuff going on, if I'm doing anything, that's me showing God's love through me. And that, the way you live your life is more of a ministry way than us sitting right here talking. That's more of a way to share the good news of Jesus Christ than us sitting here talking. Because people watch how you act. People watch how you live. People watch what you do. And that can show Jesus.
Yeah, and whenever Jesus came down from heaven and he lived a life, he showed us that the only way for us to make any sort of movement with people is to show love. Like, we can't win anybody if we're sitting there fighting with them, and that's something that I've always talked about a lot, is we have to show love to other people. Because it doesn't matter if we it does matter, like, we disagree with them maybe on certain things, right? But that's not for us. That's for God and them. And we have to show them the love of Jesus Christ so that they can maybe get saved, and so that we can show them that they have purpose with the Lord. And we have to do that through love. And all things were created by God and for God. And so we have to remember our purpose with God, and that we have to work for God every single day of our lives being Christians. And we have to remember every single day of our lives that we're Christians and we're supposed to be Christ-like. And we're supposed to spread that to other people around us if we can. And that's through love. That's through fellowship. And sure, that's also through evangelism. And church, there's the traditional way of church, right? There's the traditional way of going and being a missionary. But there's little things that you can do throughout the day, like going up and talking to different people, going and having just conversations with someone you haven't had before, maybe that you had before. Like, if you know someone and you don't talk to them a whole lot, well, you can talk to them and maybe find a way to show them the truth and the light that Jesus has given us.
Because what my pastor was telling us a few weeks ago, that there is different ways to minister to different kinds of people, because there's different kinds of people in this world. He says there's smarter people and there's people that aren't as smart, and there's people who are more, have more pride and more confidence. There's different kind of ways to talk to different kinds of people. He said he went to a car dealership and he talked to he was preaching to the salesman, and he was preaching to like this, but then when he went into the financial aid guy, he said this guys were kind of like this. We talked to him about this, and he got both of them to commit to go into his church when neither of them were actually Christians. He got both of them to commit to coming to our church, and neither of them are Christians. It's just basically it's how you talk to one another. It's how you show love for different kinds of people. It's how you do the stuff for people even when they are not asking you to do something for them. In the Bible, it's like also how you live. In the Bible, it says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. Jesus says that. And people always think, well, since I love God, I have to go out and make this conscious effort to do this and do that and keep his commandments and do everything that he tells us to do. But naturally, if you love God, you will naturally keep His commandments. It's not even a conscious decision anymore. Once you start loving God and you start showing that love, you will naturally keep His commandments. It comes with it. It's a 2 and 2 deal.
Because, it says in the Bible, faith without works is dead. And while our faith in Jesus Christ, that never ends. Once we have faith in Jesus, like, that gets us to heaven, sure. But whenever we don't have works behind those faith, other people around us, they don't see that truth. They see a fake person. If I go and I say, I'm a Christian and I act completely Christ-like, because when you say you're a Christian, that means Christ-like. But when we turn around and we act in ways that are not loving, and I'm not perfect by this, and I know most people aren't perfect, but whenever we love God, we'll consciously make an effort most of the time, or at least have that thought in the back of our head, or that conscience, whenever we're in situations, to say, hey, what would Jesus really do? Like that catchphrase is kind of corny. Now it's a real thing. What would Jesus actually do? We have to keep that in our heart, because if we really love God and we really have a relationship with God through Jesus Christ, then we need to naturally know, what would Jesus do? How would Jesus act?
Supposed to be after God's heart, and if you're after God's heart, what hurts His heart will hurt your heart. So if you're doing something that will hurt God's heart, and if you love God and you keep His commandments, then you'll naturally know you're doing something wrong, and it will hurt you. You will feel bad about it. It's just a natural thing.
Yeah, and a while back, before we started Bible study, I was backsliding like really badly, and I didn't treat people the way I mostly do now, and even now I don't treat people the way I wish I did. But before that, I would always think, I don't want to talk to this person because I don't really like them. They're too egotistical, or maybe this kid's too weird. But whenever you really accept Jesus into your life and you really think the way that, or when we try to think the way Jesus really does, you see everybody else with a different lens to say. Like, I'll say, like, whenever I think of somebody, when I see somebody, they have a story and they have a purpose. And I don't just see them as that one nerd or that one jock or this or that. I think of them as, that's one of God's people that He put on the earth, and as a Christian, it should be my duty to think about them and to go to them and talk to them, or at least just show kindness to them, show them the kindness that Jesus showed, and show them the happiness that they really can have if we really do trust in Jesus. Because if we show the world that we really do have happiness with Jesus, then they'll want that happiness naturally. And that's one of the things we always have to remember as Christians, that our purpose is showing kindness to other people.
You gotta seek God in all things that you do. That's what it says in the Bible. It says, no matter what you're doing, you gotta make sure you're seeking God. And other people will realize that. And when they realize that, you're living like this, and they're gonna want that. Because everyone in the world is going through something, or they have been through something. But no matter what you're going through, if you're still living for God, people will naturally realize that. And when they realize that, they're going to want to be able to have that faith that you have, no matter what they're going through, that they know that they can trust on God to be there with them. No matter what they walk through in life, that He is there with them.
One of the biggest examples to me, really, like a big inspiration, is someone like Tim Tebow. Because him, there's this big stigma about Christian. There's this big stereotype that if you really want to be successful, you have to act like the world, right? Like, whenever you think of a Christian, you'll think, oh, sure, they're a good person, but they're never going to get anywhere in life. Well, no, that's not true at all. If you follow Jesus completely throughout your life, think of somebody like Tim Tebow, who went and played football for multiple years, was super successful, and even though maybe he got laughed at because one time in the locker room he didn't drink beer after a game, or maybe all these different things, right, that he didn't do because he was a Christian, it doesn't matter. These haters that you naturally build up as a Christian, they don't matter. If you block them out, you'll really see how easy it is not to listen to them and to listen to God instead. And whenever you do that, whenever you really do start living for Christ and you really do start keeping those commandments in your heart, you'll really feel more free than you had before. You'll be like, I can finally live the way that I really feel like I need to as a Christian. And that's the way I've always seen it, at least, or now at least. And this last verse, 1 Peter 2:9, it says, but you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of the darkness into his marvelous light. So in the beginning it says, but ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. God picked us out. It started with the Jews, sure, but now it's completely like envelops all of us now. Every single person on the earth has a purpose with God, and when we accept Jesus into our hearts,
Start living our purpose out.
when we start living our purpose, we are a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people is what it says. And by peculiar, it means we're different from everybody else, and everybody else sees how different we are, and most people will want to be like us. Or, most people maybe won't want to be like us, but if they really see the happiness that we have, they'll want to be like us. And it says we're a royal priesthood. Like, God immediately makes us royal. Like, once we're in heaven, we're like royal, but right now he's completely picked us out. We're a chosen generation and a holy nation. And that's one thing we always have to remember, is that once we become children of God and followers of Jesus, we're chosen by God every single day. And we can't just forget all that and just ignore our purpose with God. And that's one of the important things to remember. And then the last part of this verse says, we should show forth the praises of him who called us out of the darkness into the marvelous light. We were called out of the darkness. We all had our memories of being in the darkness, and not in the light, but Jesus showed us that light, and it's our duty and it's our purpose to show other people that light. Like, we can't waste our potential as Christians just holding all that in, or saying, I have this happiness, I have this truth, but I don't want to give it to other people. Like, we have to show other people that light by being nice, by being courteous to other people. We have to show them that light. And that's, I think, my whole lesson mostly.
So, in our life, we need to make sure that we're always having a conscious effort, that we're seeking God, and that we're living for God, and we're living our purpose out. Because no matter what it is, God has a plan for you. He has a purpose for you, and you have potential. But you have the most potential in whatever God's calling you to do. And I challenge you to go find your purpose in God, and live in your potential, and then follow that purpose and never look back.
Because every single person has a purpose, whether we realize it or not. And when we really open our eyes to what Jesus has to offer, we'll find that purpose. And other things in the world, like sports, activities, we have a purpose within those too. We have a purpose to show other people the light of Jesus and show people kindness in every little thing that we do. Because even though we might not be called to be pastors or missionaries, we all have a different purpose, And so that's what I want to end on, is just remember your purpose with Jesus, and remember why he saved you and what your duty is as a Christian to show other people. And
Yeah, that's what we got. Thank y'all for coming.
We can have somebody pray. I'll pray it out. So, Lord, thank you for bringing us all together here today, and thank you for keeping us all safe today. And I just pray that you'll keep us all safe the rest of the night, and that you'll just help us to remember our purpose with you, Lord. And I pray that you'll let us have a good rest of the week, and just help us to remember you're always here with us. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.